Magic. Defined as the influencing of reality through mysterious and supernatural forces, it's an idea that has fascinated humans over the ages and into many mediums of creativity. And arguably one of the most prominent forms of media when it comes to magic is video games.
Because of the interactive nature of gaming, more development can be made into the usage of characters who are able to wield this power. And today, the Kitsune Hawk and I are here to count down what we consider to be the 10 best.
However, any unexplainable ability could be seen as magic. So the two of us have a number of rules to ensure that the characters on this list are genuine magic rulers. Starting off with the most obvious, summoning weapons out of the blue is not magic. For example, just because Zelda can summon the light bow, that doesn't immediately make her a spell wielder. Same with Link relying heavily on the Master Sword, even though he's had his fair share of magic weapons.
Secondly, we are not counting any sort of god or deity for this list, so that means that Shantae and the Kid Icarus Uprising cast will not qualify. Thirdly, if they are not human, but instead some sort of non-human spirit or other species, they will count for this list, as you'll see fairly soon.
Lastly, the contenders on this list are only from games at least one of us has played. So if we missed a spellcaster you're particularly fond of, feel free to mention them in a comment.
So now that's all taken care of, let us commence. And this is where that non-humans rule kicks in. Starting off this list, we have one of the most famous antagonists from the PlayStation era. From the Spyro the Dragon series, it's the dinosaur-like sorcerer, Ripto.
Amongst all the villains in the Spyro franchise, Ripto is the most frequent in his appearances, and is widely considered to be the primary antagonist of the series. Although first appearing at the beginning of the second game, Ripto's magic scepter is accidentally eaten by his minion Gulp, and he doesn't actually show off his magical capabilities until the end of the game.
As you could probably guess, Ripto is a very powerful sorcerer, capable of spells such as casting fireballs and creating attacks using energy orbs, as seen in his final battle at the end of Spyro 2.
However, despite Ripto's capabilities with magic, he's at the bottom of the list because, as seen in Spyro 2, Ripto does use technology quite frequently, namely with a mechanical version of Gulp and a mechanical bird during his boss fight. Despite this, Ripto is still a powerful and capable magic user, hence why he made the cut for this list. The Sengoku Basara series is full of characters that really break the mold of typical hack-and-slash characters, but it is a bit interesting to think that there are very few magic users. That lack of variety, however, serves to make Otani Yoshitsugu a more standout character.
Otani Yoshitsugu is a warrior loyal to
Sweet Lord Hideyoshi,
and upon Hideyoshi's death, he becomes Mitsunari's right-hand man during Mitsunari's quest to kill Ieyasu. However, due to Mitsunari's brash bursts of anger, Yoshitsugu finds himself being the mastermind behind the army's choices. This alone makes him quite an interesting character compared to the rest of the cast, but then there's his gameplay.
Yoshitsugu's attack pattern is built around the use of magic orbs that can be used in a variety of creative ways aside from your standard projectiles in close combat orb whip. What's especially distinctive about this is Yoshitsugu's ability to place curse marks on his enemies, through which marked enemies will take extra damage from Yoshitsugu's incoming attacks.
Yoshitsugu easily has one of the more unique gameplay styles in the Sengoku Basara series. However, he's lower on the list because his usage of magic is limited to the orbs he wields in battle. That being said, he's still a force to be reckoned with. And if he had never been part of Hideyoshi's forces, it's safe to say that Mitsunari probably wouldn't have been able to get to Ieyasu with a cohesive army.
In fact, in Yoshitsugu's story, we also see that he begins to care for Mitsunari, even taking a fatal stab for his lord. This moment alone changed how I looked at Yoshitsugu. Let this be a lesson to you all. Don't judge books by their covers, or else you're inviting yourself into a world of eternal suffering.
Hawk, was that necessary?
Very much so! Transitioning into yet another hack-and-slash series, the next magic caster on this list is none other than the leader of the Yellow Turbans himself, Zhang Zhao.
Sure, as one fiery joker put it, he's a genocidal and hypocritical heretic, but how can you not love the overacting he's famous for?
Zhang Zhao's lines make him one of the funniest characters in the series, and since his debut in Dynasty Warriors 2, he's still managed to stand out quite easily in a cast that keeps getting bigger and bigger.
The more recent Dynasty Warriors games have given Zhang Zhao the freedom to use virtually any kind of weapon, so we're focusing on the staff he uses by default.
Most distinctively in Dynasty Warriors 4 and 5, Zhang Zhao can hurl fireballs and create streams of fire with his staff, and in some instances he seems to be able to telekinetically control his staff.
However, Zhang Zhang Zhao also uses his magic proficiency as an enemy strategist, and throughout the series' interpretations of the Yellow Turban Rebellion, we've seen him and his brothers utilize genokinesis, phantom armies, mind control, control the weather, and even building an electric altar.
However, that's exactly what keeps Zhang Zhao lower on the list. Most of his strategy isn't employed when you're playing as him, and much of it is done in cooperation with Zhang Bao and Zhang Liang. He gets a lot more use out of his magic proficiency, but also requires teamwork to show his full extent.
When you think of magic users in the Castlevania series, the first name that probably comes to mind is the Dark Lord himself, Dracula. However, he's a vampire, which we are classifying as a deity. Plus, most of his magic leads to more buff transformations. So instead, we're including the Holy Cleric Sypha Belnades.
Originally featured as one of the playable characters in Castlevania III, Dracula's Curse, Sypha first appeared under the guise of her being male. A very common trend on the NES as it appears, but no matter her gender, Sypha is quite an expert in the art of magic. She has control over 3 elements: fire, lightning, and ice. With these elements at hand, Sypha proves to be one of the most powerful of the party members in Castlevania III.
Her abilities to control the elements also transfer over into the spin-off fighting game Castlevania Judgment, in which she's a playable character. In Judgment, Sypha is one of the more technical characters due to her reliability on projectile-based element attacks, but can also protect herself with an icicle barrier. Speaking of barriers, Sypha also has the power to create impenetrable barriers around her opposition, as seen in her hyper attack.
However, despite her immense power over the elements, she is admittedly the most bland of the 4 protagonists in Castlevania III, even in Judgment. Compared to the likings of fan-favorite Alucard and the insane descendant of Voldo, Sypha's honestly lacking in an interesting personality, placing her no higher on the list. Pretty much any character in the Touhou series can be considered a magic user, though so many of the more creative characters use this as an extension of their weapon of choice.
And then there's the main antagonist of Touhou 14, the counter-attacking Amanojaku, Seija Kijin.
Seija is a mischief-making yokai with the ability to flip things around, ranging from her opponent's perception to the very ideology of life itself.
This is put to good use in Double Dealing Character, where Seija's spell cards flip the screen both vertically and horizontally, easily throwing you off and making Seija a more fearsome foe than she may first appear.
However, that's not all Seija has to offer. She was made the protagonist for the spin-off game Impossible Spell Card, where she utilizes several magical items in order to break the series' infamously difficult spell cards.
However, what keeps Seija from being further up on the list is that she isn't as fleshed out as other protagonists, and her personality is just a simple opposite-day mentality.
She has a unique magical ability and uses it quite well, but as we said with Sypha, at this point personality also plays a big role with this list, and Seija doesn't exactly get remembered for her personality.
And while these first 5 magic users are already pretty formidable, the remaining half is definitely another story.